is so comprehensive. I think it's got a real chance of working under his leadership and the task force he's got going. And I mean, we're really talking about shutting down everybody who does business with them.
The U.S. ramping up its economic pressure campaign against Iran, and the administration downplaying the possibility of renewed military action. Lieutenant General Karen Gibson, former Director of Intelligence for U.S. Central Command, joins us. What do you think of this idea? Can economic pressure alone do the job?
Well, I'd say first, Dana, it's not going to be economic pressure alone. We will still sustain, I imagine, a credible military presence in the Gulf. That provides some important advantages. One, they are assisting in securing commercial traffic through the strait, an increasing number of vessels that are coming through that southern channel. Two, they're also there to protect U.S. facilities and bases in the region, U.S. national interests, and some of our allies. And they're there as a deterrent to any kind of kinetic strikes that Iran might perform. So it's not strictly economic. But to your point about these sanctions and this economic warfare that's been proposed, I think it is certainly going to continue to degrade the Iranian economy, make it more difficult for them to operate. I think I'd point out two things. One, it's going to take time. We will have to have tactical patience. Economic levers always take longer to achieve an effect than certain other levers. It's not instantaneous. Two, if we look at who this is most likely to affect, the principal partners of Iran, Turkey, Pakistan, Iraq, Oman, the Emirates, a bit of an outlier. They've already said they're going to end their trade and financial relationship with Iran. That's important. They provide a large number of imports to Iran and have provided critical financial services. But the other key country, really the most important, the linchpin, is China. And with the trade summit coming up next month between President Trump and President Xi, I think it remains to be seen how much pressure the U.S. administration is going to be willing to apply against the nation of China. Without coming down really hard on China, I don't think the economic sanctions are going to achieve the coercive shock effect that we really seek to have. I suspect it'll be more of a middle ground, perhaps going after individual Chinese refiners or trading companies, as opposed to a large-scale sanctions on China.
So the Institute for the Study of War said that Iran is seeking to invest in alternative routes and destinations for its oil exports to alleviate this economic pressure. And to your point, Bloomberg asked, Trump risks China blowback with plan to choke Iran's economy. In the meantime, we also know that the Iranians have this threshold for pain at the regime level that is higher than maybe most of us would be able to withstand. But the people of Iran are really suffering. And at some point, perhaps that tips over?
Well, all three of those, I think, are very valid, Dana. One, in terms of finding alternate routes, they do have 7 other countries that they border. That's part of what our economic sanctions would go against. And they have that north coast on the Caspian Sea by which they can get to Russia and some of the Central Asian states. They're very masterful at sanctions evasion, have done this for decades. And so that will certainly continue. In terms of the threshold for pain, yes, they've demonstrated a high willingness to absorb both military shocks and economic shocks. But as we've talked about before, the people in charge, are very hardline ideological, and the economic well-being of their citizens is not a priority. So, those are all valid arguments. I think it's part of why we will need to have patience for a pretty long-term economic standoff with Iran.
Karen Gibson, great to have you on the show as always. Thank you so much. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
So we are told that many Iranians are struggling to afford groceries as the Trump administration continues to go after that country's economy. This is the next step. Jonathan Hunt knows it well, live in Tel Aviv to bring us the latest from today. Jonathan.
Good morning to you, Bill. We are in the early stages, of course, of what President Trump has termed economic warfare against Iran. The next, more draconian stage, due to be detailed by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent on Monday. But any sanctions program isn't going to be easy to enforce. When you look at the number of land borders, for instance, Iran shares 7 different countries having land borders with the Islamic Republic. And to the north there, look at the Caspian Sea. That gives Iran direct access to Russia. There's also direct access to China via a land route through Afghanistan. Neither of those countries, according to General Jack Keane, are going to be very willing to take part in any sanctions program. Listen here.
Certainly, Russia and China have a vested interest in the United States not succeeding in the war against Iran. That they want to keep their foothold in the Middle East, and that's Iran. And that is why they're helping them.
Now, there is widespread acknowledgement, though, that the economic pressure is beginning to bite. Prices are going up, availability of goods is going down, and even some within the Iranian leadership are now talking about a change in approach. President Pezeshkian saying today, for instance, quote, "It is better to end the war today when we are in power and dignity and the whole world acknowledges our victory and emphasizes that America, contrary to all regulations, attacked our schools, hospitals, and infrastructure and is hated in the world." To my recollection, Bill, that is the first time we have heard a senior Iranian official use the words "end the war today." But as I say, he is on the more moderate wing, for the moment at least. The more hardline wing within the IRGC seems to have the upper hand. We'll see if that changes with this renewed economic pressure, Bill.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jonathan Hunt, Tel Aviv.
Sure.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
In addition to that, the USS Abraham Lincoln, it did make it back home to the port in San Diego, or it's en route right now. And then the USS George Washington did arrive in the Middle East. And apparently the second blockade, which we're in right now, of the Iranian ports is now on day 38. And the U.S. has about 20 ships in the Middle East protecting that area.
And obviously, we talk a lot about the financial hardships here in the United States, especially with gas prices and things like that. But of course, what's going on the ground in Iran, they are feeling the financial squeeze far worse than we are. Here is the vice president talking about this new phase, as he calls it, with the war on Iran.
We have destroyed their conventional military. We have put an incredible amount of pressure on their industrial base they use to manufacture weapons. We're kind of now in a new phase where the most effective tool that we have is the economic pressure that we can apply to them. And this is a delicate dance because we apply economic pressure to them. They're going to try to apply economic pressure to us. But what has been true over the last couple of weeks is they felt a lot more pressure than we have. We're going to keep that going because we think that's the best way to ultimately accomplish the final objective here.
Right. J.D. Vance getting the word out. He's also going to be in Middleton, Ohio, talking about the midterms today. I also think that China has long been giving dual-use support over to Iran. Why don't we, being that we're there, why don't we start interdicting those ships and goes, guys, turn around. We're not going to allow it. When it comes to Russia, there's a sanctions bill that passed in Lindsey Graham's honor that would actually sanction every country that's doing business with Russia. Now, the president hasn't signed it yet. He's about to sign it. And I think it's got to pass the House when they get back in 2 weeks. That's what should happen. That means we sanction India, we sanction China, we sanction Turkey, we sanction South Africa. That, all of a sudden, that could put, who knows, economically Russia over the top in a bad way.
And why not? The president said there'll be consequences for anyone that provides a lifeline to Iran. They need to feel it.
Here's the Treasury Secretary.
This is going to be the greatest coordinated economic isolation in the history of the world. And we are going to them and saying, you are either with us or against us. You want this murderous regime to end. This will work. It worked in Venezuela once we put up the blockade. It is working in Cuba right now. And it is going to work in Iran. And we are going to collapse this regime.
And it's a reminder that, of course, the United States produces more energy than we use. Obviously, we're still affected by the markets because so much of all that energy goes on to the global markets. But places like China and India are still hugely reliant on Middle East oil, and Iran uses that to their advantage by focusing on that choke point.
And just the thing is, Jack Keene's coming up in about an hour, and one of the things he says is for sure, the Wall Street Journal had the best story last Sunday, and they basically said their goal is to start inflicting pain on us, going for our bases around October. That'll be their surprise. If we have to absorb casualties in October, the Republican Party will pay the price of the midterms. That's exactly what they want. They want to make Trump Jimmy Carter. And the way to stop that is to understand what they're going to do and just finish the job. And that's 20% of the targets that are still out there. You wipe them out, I think we go a long way to collapsing that regime. I would love to see us starting arming the population, who's basically been held hostage for almost 50 years.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Now, if Democrats were honest, they could at least credit Donald Trump with what has been a historic term. Pay attention. In just 2 years, Donald Trump has ended war after war around the globe. Iran is no longer the nuclear threat that it was. That's good for the world. We have the best military recruitment in 15 years. America is now the #1 producer of oil and gas in the world. Our stock market setting record after record, one after another. Unemployment now historically low across every demographic. Violent crime at an all-time low. 9 of the 10 most wanted fugitives, they have been captured. Biden got 4 of them in 4 years. ICE has arrested 10,000 illegal gang members. Millions have been deported or self-deported. Our border is finally secure. We can keep going, and yet no one on the left or in the left-wing legacy media mob will ever give him any credit. Anyway, here with reaction, Texas Congressman Brandon Gill. Congressman, love your take on this. I mean, this is the thing. You would think Donald Trump does nothing good ever. If you ever watch any other network, read the New York Times or Washington Post or any major newspaper, they never, ever give him any credit for anything. They kept their eyes closed with Biden's cognitive decline, and they went along with the lie that the border is closed and the border is secure. So, you know, one thing that Republicans always have to deal with is abusively corrupt and biased media.
That's exactly right. There are 2 things that unify the Democratic Party right now. The first thing, I think, is a deep loathing for America, for its founding principles, for its culture, its history, and especially its people. And secondly, I think, is a deep, visceral, blood-curdling hatred for Donald Trump. You can't turn on MSNBC or CNN for more than 5 seconds before you hear some deranged left-wing lunatic screaming Donald Trump's name, blaming him for everything wrong under the sun, never giving him credit for a single thing that he's accomplished already in just less than 2 years of this administration. That is what unifies this party. They don't have anything to put forward other than socialism and hatred for President Trump.
So the one thing that separates Republicans from every other midterm year that I've covered in my life is this year they have a lot of money, number one. Number 2, they have this convention coming up. How impactful will that be in your view?
Well, I think that effectively putting President Trump on the ballot is going to be a game changer for Republicans. I think most Americans across this country look at and know the successes that the president has already accomplished. They see that the border is secure. They see that violent crime is dropping. They see that their taxes stayed low, that they had no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime, that they're keeping more money in their pocket. They're seeing that this is a president who cares deeply about this country and preserving it so that our kids and grandkids get to have the same experience and opportunities that we got to experience. And they've seen how quickly the president has turned it around after 4 disastrous, just frankly, abominable years under Joe Biden. And I think that they're going to reward Republicans for that. And I think having the president front and center in front of the American people at this convention, and by the way, on the campaign trail, he's working incredibly hard for Republicans in both the House and the Senate. I think that's going to make a huge difference.
All right. We appreciate it, Congressman. Thank you for being with us. All right. Thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.
President Trump sounding off on the progress made against Iran while also warning about the threat Tehran's nuclear program posed to the world.
I think we're doing very well. We are letting people know about that. We're letting people know that, you know, it's wonderful to say everything's good, but you can't, if you had a country like that, and they're crazy, if you had a country like that, they would absolutely use the nuclear weapon without question. And so I stopped that, and I stopped it cold with the B-2 bombers.
Joining me now to discuss this is former NSC Chief of Staff under President Trump, Alex Gray. Alex, great to see you this morning. You know, we're calling this economic D-Day on Iran, isolating them, putting them in the corner, ramping up the economic pressure and sanctions to an extent they've never experienced before. But let's be honest, Alex, sanctions against Iran are nothing new. So should we be confident that they're going to work this time? Is there something different about this round of sanctions that we're talking about?
Well, Lydia, I think the biggest difference between now and a couple months ago is that President Trump has shown, contrary to Iran's expectation, contrary to media expectation, that he's not going to give in. He is not going to walk away, even if it's politically inconvenient in the United States. And people continue to forget, because Iran's an authoritarian dictatorship, because they can absorb a lot of pain, that doesn't change the fact that the U.S. blockade is working. It is doing exactly what it was intended to do. It is putting enormous pressure on Iran's economy. And their out has always been the assumption, propagated by many in the U.S., that President Trump would just cut and run as he got closer to November. And he has absolutely refused to do that. And so I think, Lydia, what we're going to see is President Trump may hate conflict. He may be a person, I think, who genuinely values peace. But the one thing he values even more than that is U.S. interests. And he is not going to allow Iran to try and run out the clock on us for the very reasons he mentioned in the clip you just showed.
I think you're absolutely right. You pointed out a number of great points there, Adam, and among them is that Iran's economy is absolutely in shambles. Inflation is skyrocketing. You have to wonder how much longer their economy can take this. Another point raised is by Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. You know, he pointed out yesterday that this is also going to address other countries and businesses that are continuing to support Iran. They are now being put on notice. Let's listen to Scott Bessent and we'll talk about it on the other side.
This is going to be the greatest coordinated economic isolation in the history of the world. And we are going to them and saying, you are either with us or against us. You want this murderous regime to end. This will work. It worked in Venezuela once we put up the blockade. It is working in Cuba right now. And it is going to work in Iran. And we are going to collapse this regime.
So he's talking about a coordinated economic pressure also going after countries that are doing business with Iran, like China. What could that mean for holding China to account here, Alex?
Yeah, Lydia, look, well, Scott Bessent's the best Treasury Secretary since Alexander Hamilton. He's incredibly good at this, and he's right. Contrary, again, to the media narrative, this year has been a huge economic setback for regimes like Russia and China, who have seen the U.S. cut off access to Venezuelan oil, have seen the United States crack down on sanctioned oil from other places, from Iran, who have seen all sorts of actual impact from President Trump's economic activities. And so what I think we're going to see here, Lydia, is the president and Secretary Bessent are very aware that China's economy is not strong. Russia's economy is a basket case. Doing what we did in Venezuela, where we are restricting access to outside flows of cheap oil, is going to have a very real impact. The Chinese know how fragile their economy and their regime actually are, and they do not want to get into a situation where President Trump has additional leverage over them going into these discussions that he's having with Xi Jinping in September. So I think the Chinese are going to be very sensitive to what happens coming out of Iran and coming out of Scott Bessent and President Trump's economic warfare.
I think you're right. We're already seeing some of those chips fall into place. The UAE, as you know, just this week said they're going to end trade with Iran, hugely detrimental to Iran there. So we're going to follow that, Alex. Thank you very much, Alex Gray, for your time this morning.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
We turn to more big news out of my free state of Florida from last night. Trump-backed Congressman Byron Donalds has officially secured the nomination to be the next governor. And Donalds has frequently warned that his opponent, this guy David Jolly, is a Trojan horse and he is for socialism. Now, he may not pay his DSA membership dues, but look at this. Jolly seems awfully happy to be running alongside that radical socialist that we were just playing in our opening monologue, that woman that's running as a Democrat, Angie Nixon. Take a look.
Let me ask you very simply, will you campaign with Angie Nixon?
Look, I'm going to sit with Angie. And Angie and I have been campaigning for a year in the same room. She's been everywhere. She's a fighter. She leaves it all on the field.
Oh, sure, I'll campaign with the Marxist socialist. Keep in mind, back in 2025, this is what Angie Nixon had to say about Byron Donalds and President Trump. Quote, "Never thought I would see the day when a grown black man would call a white supremacist daddy." Wow, talk about vile and vicious and mean and cruel. Well, that pretty much takes the cake. Here to respond, Republican nominee for Florida Governor Byron Donalds is with us. I'll give you a chance to respond to that, but overall, you know, you have been telling everybody that Jolly is a phony, that Jolly is really just trying to hide. It's sort of like when we saw AOC on the Sunday program go, we don't really believe all the things we were saying. That was woke 1.0 crazy. So the polls show that their wokeness is not gaining them traction. So they'll deny who they really are, get elected, and then try to enact what they really believe. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right, Sean. The reason why I say that David Jolly is a Trojan horse for the Democrat Socialists of America is because he still thinks it's okay to steal the puberty from young kids. It's only he and the WNBA and Angie Nixon who thinks it's okay for boys to be playing in girls' sports. These are things that Floridians do not believe, that we opposed. But Sean, there's more. This is a guy who said that Anthony Fauci was right and Ron DeSantis was wrong. When Ron DeSantis opened up Florida, David Jolly packed his bags and went to Pennsylvania. And then he was on MSNBC criticizing Florida, criticizing Ron DeSantis for how he managed COVID. And now he's announcing his plan for property insurance. It's a complete government takeover of insurance in our state. That's socialism, that's socialism, Sean. And so that's why we believe that he is a Trojan horse. He will bend the knee to the radical left. And that's not what the people of Florida want.
You know, I've known you, Congressman, for a long time, and we've been friends a long time. And, you know, one of the things that I really admire is you always go back, and I think these 8 years of Governor DeSantis have been really special and have really separated Florida from the rest of the country. And it's brought in more money, more people, more jobs, more opportunity than ever before. Wall Street South is bigger than Wall Street in New York City. And you always say, I am going to build off that success and acknowledge it. You know, that's something you don't hear a lot from politicians, and I give you a lot of credit for that.
Well, thank you. And look, Ron DeSantis has done a great job leading our state. And now it's about solidifying those wins and taking it to the next level. And so we have a situation where David Jolly says that he wants to apologize to the world on behalf of Florida. He wants to go on an apology tour, similar to Barack Obama wanting to go on an apology tour. Well, in Florida, Sean, we are not going to apologize for being the best state in America. We're not going to apologize for being a common sense state that backs the blue and has free markets and limited government. It's what separates Florida from these other states. The people who have come to our state, we have many people who are multi-generational, like my wife, she's a 6th-generation Floridian. But Sean, you know, a lot of people from New York and New Jersey and Illinois who are fleeing those states. They left those states for a reason. They do not want to see Florida become New Jersey or Connecticut. They want Florida to remain free. And as their next governor, Florida will remain the free state of Florida.
Well, it's very, very important. But I do think that Jolly's being a little more cagey. He's trying to hide his true beliefs. And every bit of progress that you're talking about building on will disappear. I want people to know that's how important your race is to the state of Florida. Anyway, Congressman, we wish you luck. And yes, I did vote in the primary for you and Ashley. There you go. All right.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Good afternoon. I heard you missed me. Here I am. Welcome to the White House. A warm welcome to our distinguished guests today, Mr. President, my father, Mr. Knaus, cabinet members, Mr. Pensky, Mr. Bowles, Mr. Shanks, the talented drivers, our universities, and the remarkable individuals who stand in support of my Fostering the Future initiative. The greatest achievement, investment America can make is not in technology, infrastructure, or capital markets. It's our children. We are at the beginning of an era defined by artificial intelligence, robotics, and industries that have yet to be imagined. But America's greatest competitive advantage remains in its own people. Tomorrow's leaders are sitting in classrooms today, including those growing up in foster care. Their capability is no less remarkable. Fostering the Future elevates America's youth based on merit and talent, lifting them beyond economic circumstance and every other condition that may limit opportunity. Our mission is simple yet transformational. Provide every young person from the foster care community the chance to earn a college education, launch a meaningful career, and achieve lasting financial independence. Today, Indiana University and Purdue University join Fostering the Future's growing coast-to-coast alliance of leading academic institutions. Congratulations and thank you. Together, they expand a national network of 26 universities that prepare our foster youth to shape America's growth. I'm very proud to share that this last spring, Fostering the Future scholarships supported the education of our first doctor. He will change the lives of so many people. Tomorrow, thanks to visionary partners such as IndyCar and Fox, Fostering the Future graduates will build new companies, launch new industries, and redefine what is possible for all Americans. Fostering the Future is more than an educational initiative. It is generational investment in America's talent pipeline. Every student who graduates strengthens our workforce, accelerates innovation, expands economic opportunity, and reduces long-term dependence on government assistance. The return of this investment is measured not only in lives changed for the better, but in stronger communities, a more competitive nation, and a future powered by American ingenuity. Education is the one asset that can never be taken away. It is the foundation upon which confidence is built, opportunities created, and the future is invented. And finally, look at this incredible race car, gorgeous and powerful. I'm sure we cannot wait to see it start its engine. Good luck to all of the drivers and teams on Sunday's race. And now, it is my pleasure to introduce a true champion, the chairman of Penske Entertainment and owner of IndyCar, Mr. Roger Penske.
Well, welcome, everyone. What an honor to be here today to represent many of you in the companies you represent, to support the First Lady's program, Fostering the Future. When you think about what the First Lady is committed to in her leadership, her commitment, and also to drive education amongst our younger generation. But you send a powerful message about our country that we are committed to education and fostering the next generation. Our company and Fox have the same core values, and that's giving back. We're so excited today to be part of launching this commitment to fostering the future. Thinking about the young people that are here today, they're going to be the benefactors, have an education, build a career, and I might say many of them might be the leaders of our country and our business. When I think about the future, and I think about what we have today, we will have this weekend an amazing, iconic 250-mile Freedom Grand Prix. And it will cap off 250 years anniversary of our country. And with a powerful message that the First Lady has given us, millions of people around the world will see this history being made. And what about the thousands of people who will come here on their own to see the event and be part of that as we go forward? We're very excited. I can tell you, Mr. President and Madam First Lady, we are very excited to be part of this. Your commitment, the country's commitment for youth and education is certainly our rising star. Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to introduce Doug Bowles, who is the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Doug?
Well, good afternoon, Mr. President, First Lady. Thank you so much for hosting us here in this beautiful Rose Garden. It's really an honor to be here, to be with you, especially to talk about fostering the future. Thank you, Roger. You know, it's an honor to be here representing IndyCar. It's America's original racing series. In fact, our first national points-paying race was in June of 1905 here on the East Coast in Bronx, New York. So this is America's sport, and to be able to race the Freedom 250 in our nation's capital is outstanding. But Roger, you've championed our sport for so long, not just IndyCar racing, but the sport in general. But what you have brought to IndyCar since you've come is unbelievable, and we would not be here today getting ready to race in our nation's capital, around Washington, D.C., around the National Mall without your passion. You know, if we today had to write the history of motorsport, you could not do it without a volume specifically about Roger Penske, starting with your passion, your commitment, your leadership, and certainly your success. Thank you so much for all you've done for our sport. As Roger mentioned, IndyCar is honored to stand here with the First Lady to take part in fostering the future alongside our friends at Fox. Like most, I'd only a small understanding of fostering. In fact, it was only the basics like food, shelter, and stability. Those were the things that I thought about when I thought about fostering children. What I've learned along the way and understanding what Fostering the Future does, there are so many challenges that our foster kids face, especially at 18 when they become emancipated and are left without the infrastructure or the resources to immediately move into adulthood. In fact, I met one earlier today, Jaden Martinez, who's the son of Texas, who's one of those young men who we know out here. Thank you, Jaden, for being here and being a voice for Fostering the Future. Fostering the Future, like an IndyCar pit crew, provides tools, support, and resources along the entire path of foster care, and especially when foster children age out of the foster care system. Funding higher level education is one of the biggest challenges, and as the First Lady said, education and investing in our youth is so important. This partnership with Fostering the Future will open doors for our youth and honor two great educational institutions in our home state, Indiana University and Purdue University, by providing scholarships to allow these young adults to continue their education at these world-class institutions. You know, IndyCar is a sport that requires talent and leadership to succeed. And education at Indiana University and Purdue University, through the scholarships from Fostering the Future like this, will help harvest those qualities in the next generation. In just a few short days, with the unyielding support of our president, thank you, Mr. Trump, IndyCar will blaze an unprecedented path on the streets of our nation's capital. The stars of the fastest racing on earth will reach speeds in excess of 180 miles an hour as they make their way past the U.S. Capitol building, the Washington Monument, and around the National Mall. They'll put on a massive and very fast spectacle to celebrate our country's 250th birthday. But before they strap in the cockpit and before they put those visors down, we have a few of them here today, and they've come bearing a special gift for the First Lady. I'd like to welcome those drivers right now, and if they could come up and join us by the left front of this beautiful IndyCar. Six-time IndyCar Series champion and 2008 Indianapolis 500 winner, and the second winningest driver in the history of IndyCar racing, ladies and gentlemen, Scott Dixon. Next, an eight-time IndyCar Series winner and the winner of the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500, the 2016 race, whose wife just became an American citizen this past May at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Ladies and gentlemen, Alexander Rossi. Second-generation American driver and IndyCar Series race winner Graham Rahal. And finally, seven-time IndyCar Series race winner Scott McLaughlin. And an important note about Scott McLaughlin: in April of 2025, this New Zealander became an American citizen. Scotty? And Scott, if the First Lady had come up, you have something special for the drivers to present to the First Lady. Once again, on behalf of the IndyCar Series, Mr. President and First Lady, thank you so much for all your support in our event this weekend and for hosting us here today. And with that, it's time to hear from the other half of this awesome partnership supporting Fostering the Future. He's Hoosier born, and he's one of the most talented leaders in sports and broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a welcome to Fox Sports President and Executive Producer, Eric Shanks.
All right, so this is the finish line. Thank you, Doug, and good afternoon, everybody. It's a great time to be in the Rose Garden this afternoon. Standing here today as we talk about the crossroads of sports and opportunity and community, it fills me with great pride as a native of Indiana and an IU alum. Thank you, Pam. Where we are obligated to say that we are national champions on the football field as well as in the classroom. Now, Now, through the work that we do every day at Fox Sports, we believe in investing in the future of America. Today, that commitment takes on an entirely new meaning. On behalf of Fox Corporation and our entire team at Fox Sports, we are extremely excited to partner with First Lady Melania Trump and her visionary Fostering the Future initiative. Fox is honored to provide scholarship funding at Indiana University and also Purdue University, alongside our partners at IndyCar, to ensure that foster youth have the tools and support to build bright futures. Mrs. Trump, thank you for your leadership in opening these critical doors. You are making a powerful impact for these kids. I also want to extend my thanks to our great partners at Penske and IndyCar, both Roger Penske and Doug Bowles. Together, we aren't just creating pathways for these incredible students, we are also making history this weekend. Fox Sports presents a landmark event this weekend with the Freedom 250 IndyCar Grand Prix right here in Washington, D.C., racing through the nation's capital to celebrate our 250th birthday. This is going to be a celebration of our great country unlike any other. So, President Trump and First Lady, thank you for allowing us to have a race in your backyard. It takes incredible partners to pull off an event of this scale while lifting up our next generation at the same time. Thank you all for being a part of this milestone moment. We're going to present the checks to both Indiana and Purdue, and following the check presentation, that's going to conclude our event for today. Thank you for coming. Thank you all very much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
The futures indicates a downside move at the opening bell. The Dow's off about 400 at this point, and the Nasdaq's down about 150. Plenty of red ink. Check on Bitcoin, please. I'm looking at 71.8 at the moment. Coinbase Chief Executive Brian Armstrong is with us this morning. Bitcoin 71.8 as of right now. Is that because the market senses that the Clarity Act is going to pass?
Yeah, I think that's right. And thanks for having me on the show. So there's a big Senate vote coming up on September 15th. Leader Thune was good enough to go and schedule that. So we now have a very clear date when the Senate's going to vote on the Clarity Act. And it's been a strong bipartisan compromise, which leads me to believe that it's going to get far more than 60 votes. And the administration, just yesterday, we had this meeting with the president and the top regulators at the SEC and CFTC. And that was the big topic of conversation. Is there was a big sense of urgency from this administration. Let's get Clarity done. Let's get it over the line. So both of those things, I think, are contributing to this Bitcoin price bump. And I personally believe we're at the beginning of the next crypto bull run.
Okay. There is some opposition to the Clarity Act, especially from the banks. Why do the banks oppose it?
So I would be careful not to paint with too broad of a brush there. There's actually a number of banks who've come out and endorsed the Clarity Act. Goldman Sachs, Citi, BNY, and other financial services firms, by the way, too, like Fidelity and BlackRock have all come out and endorsed it. So I think the bill is actually very good for banks. Most banks recognize that. It gives them new powers that allow them to grow their business and with this new technology, which is great. There's still a few holdout banks, I would say, that are against it. And the reason is plain and simple. They don't want competition from crypto companies. They don't want to have to pay higher rates to their customers. And competition is what made America great, right? Free market competition, that's what is the ultimate consumer protection that creates better outcomes for everybody. So obviously, folks in the Senate are not going to stand for that. People don't want protectionist behavior from a small group of incumbents. And so I think most of the banks have realized at this point that this is an opportunity, it's not a threat, and we've got to get these clear rules so this industry can be built here in America.
Trump set out to make America the crypto capital of the world. Has he done it? Is America the crypto capital?
Yeah, actually, you've got to give the president a lot of credit. On the campaign trail in 2024, I think he very astutely recognized that there was millions of voters in the U.S. who felt disenfranchised by the prior administration around crypto. They felt attacked unlawfully, right? And so he made a promise to make America the crypto capital of the world. And within weeks of taking office, he made good on that promise. He drafted an executive order asking the agencies in his administration to go further this agenda. He appointed two of the most crypto-friendly and competent regulators anywhere in the world, Chair Atkins and Chair Selig at the two top regulator agencies. And then he got the Genius Act passed. He created a strategic Bitcoin reserve. So it's all been incredible. And to really make all those changes and progress that this administration has made durable into the future, we can't just have regulation. That's not enough. We need legislation. That's where the Clarity Act comes in. And it's going to make sure that someone in the future in a new administration can't change the rules again. It's going to make this progress durable for decades to come.
I've got 20 seconds left. Would you forecast $100,000 Bitcoin by the end of this year?
I think there's a good chance. I don't know exactly I think over the next couple of years, if I say 2030, I think it's very likely we'll see a $300,000 and $400,000 Bitcoin, and we'll see how it goes.
And there's a headline for you. Brian Armstrong, thanks for not being with us, sir. We appreciate it. We'll see you again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We have to get Bruce into office. We got to get Bruce in there. Nowhere is the communist attack on American society more clear than here in New York State. The radical left Governor Kathy Hochul has been very, very bad on crime, a nightmare for crime. She supports New York's disastrous no cash bail law.
Joining me now is the Republican New York gubernatorial candidate, Bruce Blakeman. Bruce, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate your time this morning. Let's go ahead and start.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you.
Thank you. Let's start with this idea of a debate. I think it would be fantastic to see you up on the debate stage with Kathy Hochul. How soon could we see something like this? Because I think it would be pivotal for voters to hear both sides as they try to make up their mind in this election.
Well, so far we only have one debate scheduled for October 13th. I'm looking forward to it because I want to compare my record of cutting taxes, creating jobs, prosperity in my county. My county's larger than 8 states in population. We have the lowest poverty rate in the state. People are happy, and U.S. News and World Report says it's the safest county in America versus Kathy Hochul's record. We are the most overtaxed state in the United States of America. Our electric bills are 70% higher than the national average, and she is the most pro-criminal governor in the United States of America. So I'm very happy to compare my record against hers.
Yeah, absolutely. And President Trump cares about New York State. He cares about New York City. He's made that very clear. How crucial was it to have his support during your campaign?
Well, I'm very honored to have his support. He's been a good friend and an ally of mine for years. But Kathy Hochul wants to make this race about Washington. It's about her lack of leadership. It's about her failures. And it's how I can do a much better job as governor. President Trump didn't raise your taxes in the state of New York. He didn't raise your electric bill 48 times. Kathy Hochul approved of 48 utility rate hikes. So we are 50 in economic outlook. We're at the bottom, 5-0 of all the states in economic outlook. That's Kathy Hochul. Kathy Hochul, again, is the worst governor in America.
Yeah. And you might already be pulling some Democrat voters into your camp. The New York Post reporting that prominent Democrat donor Bonnie Engelbart-Lautenberg is going to be holding a fundraiser for you. She previously donated to Governor Hochul's re-election campaign just last July. Are the tides turning in New York?
Well, they're completely turning. Every day I get Democrats who walk up to me and say, I've been a lifelong Democrat. I've never voted Republican in my life. Bruce, I'm voting for you this year. Our party has gone crazy. They've gone too far to the left. It seems like the Communist Party. It doesn't sound like the party of Daniel Patrick Moynihan or even Bill Clinton for that matter.
Yeah.
So the fact is that every day people are coming and they're contributing to my campaign like Bonnie is, and I'm very grateful to have her support. But there are other Democrats. Just yesterday, I talked to a prominent Democrat who is one of Kathy Hochul's biggest supporters. And now they're supporting me because the state is in a death spiral and people know it, and they want a pilot to pull them out of that death spiral, and I'm that pilot.
Part of this is the Kathy Hochul issue, going up directly against her and her policies. But it's also about New York City to a certain extent. There are people here that are fed up, and Zohran Mamdani, in some ways, failing on so many of his policies, his bungled pied-à-terre rollout, et cetera, setting a stage for you to have more of a runway. Lee Zeldin was pretty close in beating Governor Hochul. Do you think that this whole DSA movement and talk about socialism and comparisons to communism set up a race that is, realistic for you to win? Because like I said, those margins were slim before, and now it seems like you've got a big opening here.
Well, the polls are even better than was reported by Siena because New York State funds the Siena poll, and we all know who runs New York State. Our internal polling and other independent polls have me within the margin of error. This is neck and neck. That's why Kathy Hochul's spending $4 million attacking me this week. But let me tell you something. Kathy Hochul endorsed Zohran Mamdani. Zohran Mamdani endorsed her. They are lockstep. Zohran Mamdani is anti-Semitic. He's anti-Christian. He's anti-American, and he has absolutely no idea what he's doing. He's a communist, and he doesn't understand that American values, the Judeo-Christian work principle, capitalism, have made us the greatest country in the world and created more prosperity than any country in the history of the world. And this guy wants to destroy America and bring in a system that's been failed. And Kathy Hochul is a willing participant. I will stop it when I become governor. We will get back to American values. We'll get back to capitalism. We'll create good jobs. We'll make it more affordable for our young people to live here in New York State.
Governor Hochul facing backlash for her recent executive order for that one-year moratorium on large-scale data center build-outs. New York Congressman Mike Lawler was on this program earlier this week. Here's what he said about it. Listen.
When you look at the situation and Kathy Hochul implements a statewide moratorium, what she is saying is don't come here. Go do your business elsewhere, which is why New York State leads the nation in out-migration. It's why it is a terrible place to do business and why people are expanding in Florida and Texas and Tennessee and North Carolina and South Carolina and elsewhere. We have the highest tax burden and the worst business climate. If you want to address these problems, you need to have a coherent economic and energy policy, and that is fundamental if New York is going to prosper moving forward.
And Kathy Hochul is anti-business. She drives people out of the state. That's not good for people that live here, Bruce. And I'm glad that he brought up the energy piece of this because it reminds me of what she and Cuomo did on energy that raised costs for New Yorkers here. When you ban things, they become more expensive instead of bringing them into the fold and integrating them within the local economy.
Well, it's the green energy scam. Kathy Hochul gives billions of dollars in subsidies to these science projects that produce very little energy. They're very expensive. We're sitting on one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world, and we're not extracting that natural gas. It would increase our supply, which would bring down costs. It would create jobs and prosperity. They're doing it just over the border in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, they're driving around in brand new Cadillac Escalades, and on the New York side of the border, they're driving around in rusted out 25-year-old pickup trucks. So I agree with Mike Lawler, and the fact of the matter is Kathy Hochul is putting a pause on AI and data centers because she says she needs time to figure it out. Well, Kathy, what have you been doing for 4 years? You've been the governor. This is the fastest growing industry in the world, and you haven't figured it out. I have sat down with the developers and local government, and people are concerned about water supply. These data centers will have their own water recirculation systems. They're worried about energy These data centers will have their own energy generation plants and will not only produce energy for the data centers, but they will lower the cost of utilities in the host communities by giving them free energy. And the third thing is it will create construction jobs and permanent jobs. That I agree with Mike Lawler 100%. That's why we were 50 out of 50 states in economic outlook, because we are unfriendly to business. We are not creating jobs. And that's why young people are moving out of our state.
New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani seemingly always in the news for these socialist policies that he's rolling out here. But a new poll, Bruce, shows that these progressive policies are not as popular as the big Apple sort of bubble tries to claim. Almost half of New Yorkers oppose the DSA movement. If you were to win in November, what would you do with Mamdani? Because some say you are the only hope that we have to reverse any of this.
Well, they're absolutely right. I am the only hope. Only the governor can keep a check on the mayor. The governor can do it through the budget process. The city needs approval from the state for many of the things that they do, especially those things that concern their budget. So as governor, I will keep a check on Zohran Mamdani. I will not let him destroy the economy of New York City. I will not let him compete with local family-owned businesses, with city-owned grocery stores. We will roll back congestion pricing, and we will have policies in place that grow our economy and lower homelessness, rather than the homelessness and the drugs that are taking place, drug addiction that's taking place in our city right now by the permissive policies of Zohran Mamdani. He is a communist. He talks about collectivism. We'll get back to capitalism. New York's the financial capital of the world. We want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
But businesses are leaving in droves, taking thousands and thousands of jobs with them. We have to stop that hemorrhage, and we got to rebuild our economy. And that means stopping Zohran Mamdani from the policies that are destroying the job creation in our state.
Yeah, and can we talk about the pied-à-terre tax, because that's driving people out too, or making them reconsider whether or not they want to have a second home here or be here at all. A botched rollout, obviously, that's now playing its way through the court system, so that takes a little time. Is there anything that can be done about that? Controlling the budget is a huge portion of this, because Hochul keeps greenlighting the things that he wants to do, but is there anything else that could be done about some of these draconian policies that he's implemented?
Well, yes, we have to stop them. We've got to get back to common sense and good judgment and economic principles that will grow our economy rather than contract our economy. So I will be very forceful in making sure that we roll back things like the pied-à-terre tax. Think about this. Every other state in America is trying to lure high net worth individuals into their state. We are basically asking them to leave. Rich people can go wherever they want. And who gets stuck holding the bag? The middle class. In the last 4 years, we've lost $11 billion in tax revenue from people and businesses who have left our state, and they've taken thousands and thousands of jobs with them. And who does it hurt? The carpenter, the plumber, the electrician, the waiter, the waitress, the bartender, the dry cleaner, the local florist, the dog walker. So we have to end those policies that are killing our economy. And it's not just a tax on rich people. It ends up being a tax on the middle class.
Yeah. Bruce Blakeman, we so appreciate your time this morning. We look forward to watching that debate in October. Thank you so much for being here.
Lieutenant Colonel James Carafano with us on the Evening Edit, praising President Trump's push to stop Iran getting a nuclear bomb. President Trump also says any country doing business with Iran will face tremendous economic consequences. This is economic D-Day, as we've been reporting. This is what Reagan did to break up the Soviet Union. An economic squeeze. Within a decade, the Soviet Union fell apart. Let's welcome back to the show veteran U.S. Marine Colonel and former Marine invasion commander in Iraq. He's got a stellar 30-year career with the U.S. military and foreign policy expertise. He's Colonel Mike Jernigan. Colonel, it's great to see you. What do you make of this new plan? Because Iran is seeking help from China and Russia. What will happen there?
Hey, good evening, Liz. Yeah, that's an important thing, is we're seeing that the Iranians have been trying to sneak in some supplies through the Caspian Sea, through their port of Chabahar down close to Pakistan. And so all of the economic stuff is, we've been seeing this effect for a while, but now we're going to start seeing it magnified. Specifically, yesterday, the United Arab Emirates, the second largest trading partner with Iran, said, we're not going to do business with you. Obviously, the first one was the People's Republic of China. Why that's important is we talk about the west to east moving the Straits of Hormuz, or the east to west coming in, but from south south to north and north to south, there's trade that's going on between UAE and Iran that as of yesterday got turned off.
Okay, so we've also been tracking the reports that resources are surging to the Middle East to build and construct overland oil pipelines to circumvent Iran and the Hormuz Strait. What do you make, with more and more of these pipelines are coming in, what do you make of the reports that Iran is losing control of the Strait of Hormuz, that CENTCOM has quietly guided 10 million barrels of oil a day in a stealth operation, setting up a shipping corridor, hugging the coastline of Oman? You know, that's more than 80% of the liquids transiting through the Hormuz Strait over the past 2 weeks have taken this Omani route. That's about 2/3 of pre-war levels. The U.S. has been blinding Iranian radars and blanking them out and shooting down Iranian drones and cruise missiles. We're showing the tracking here of hugging the Oman coastline there, bypassing Iran here. What do you make of this?
So this is great to be able to finally talk about this and see this in some graphics, because what's happening is everybody who's in the Straits of Hormuz, particularly the U.S. military, knows that the Iranians do not have control of it, and they haven't closed it. Meanwhile, the U.S. blockade is closing off all traffic to Iran, but letting out any other traffic that's not. Current ship tracking shows 10 to 15 ships a day for the last several months have been getting through the straits. And so this is what's happening is the Navy's doing its job.
Great job with the analysis there. Thank you, veteran U.S. Marine Corps Iraqi invasion commander as well, Colonel Mike Jernigan. Thank you so much. Thank you for your service to America. Now,
appreciate it.
Thanks, David.
Let's bring in Indiana Senator Jim Banks. He's member of the Armed Services Committee and NRSC Vice Chair. So he's interested in what's happening, what's coming up with those midterms, as we all are. First of all, the Somali pirates. I mean, granted, it's one tanker, and this may be a sort of a one-off move, but going into the Gulf of Aden down in the south, of course, the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has lost control of. But the fact that they're reaching out to other areas, does that concern you?
Well, sure. But at the end of the day, what President Trump and the military is doing to push back, clear the strait, it's significant. It's working. The blockade, the economic measures are effective, but our military actions, what we've done to wipe out the defense industrial base in Iran, we've eliminated 85% of the ballistic missiles in Iran, and we put all of these proxy groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, or even Somali pirates, on notice that we're not going to let you get away with it anymore. These terrorist groups and the regime in Iran have been used to, for 47 years, getting away with it. And President Trump has told them, you're not going to get away with it anymore. This is going to be more severe, and we're going to be tougher on you. You're going to feel the pain more than you've ever felt before until you come to the table, clear the strait, and ensure us that you will never have a nuclear weapon. And President Trump's legacy is going to be that he was the president that brought peace to the Middle East and to the whole wide world by preventing Iran from ever having a nuclear weapon. We can all be grateful and proud of that.
Now, Secretary Bessent has come out and said that this economic D-Day that the president is rolling out will prevent the resumption, or could prevent the resumption of fighting, of actual attacks on Iran. Some people are saying that that's exactly what we need right now, that we never finished the deal when we started it back in the end of February, March, that we should have done it then, and we should be doing it now, perhaps in addition or as a complement to the economic D-Day. What do you think?
Well, I think that the economic D-Day, the as you talked about with your last guest with Victoria, the building upon the maximum pressure campaign from the first Trump administration, that which was very effective, but learning from that and making it even tougher on Iran and isolating them, as well as never forget that 90% of the oil that flows out of Iran through the Strait of Hormuz goes to China, our biggest adversary. So right. If any other country like China helps the Iranians against the United States of America, there will be hell to pay for them as well. These economic D-Day sanctions and this approach is not just targeted toward Iran, but any actor that would try to assist them or help them too. So then you have that backed up by the threats and the actions of our military. And what President Trump has done is he's brought Iran to its knees. It's just a matter of time before they come back once again and beg for a real permanent deal. And when that happens, gas prices in America are going to plummet. Our economy is going to benefit from it. And most importantly, Iran will never have a nuclear weapon pointed at America to endanger our kids and our grandkids.
We do, of course, have a midterm election coming up. And the question is whether all this can happen before the midterms, whether voters will see some signs that we've turned a corner in ending this conflict. Even the Iranians, by the way, are now referring to the midterm elections. They know that the president and Republicans are particularly sensitive about how all this could affect the midterms. How do you think it's going to affect the midterms, assuming we don't have a clear resolution at the time that they happen?
Well, I give President Trump so much credit because he doesn't look at this as an election issue. He looks at this as a long-term ensurement that Iran will not have a nuclear weapon ever pointed at us or at Israel, our allies, or our troops abroad. And some things are more important than elections. So
I got it.
President Trump is always
but again, the election is coming, and there are a lot of Republicans who are concerned about being reelected or going against a competitor. How do you think the war is going to play into the elections?
Well, I think we got to bring gas prices back down, and we got to get the economy moving and the housing market moving and the quality of life for all Americans to continue to improve. And there are lots of good signs in the economy that is happening. And the good news is that immediately upon striking a deal with Iran, gas prices will plummet and Americans will feel better from it.
Well, we've seen that happen before when it appeared we were going to come to a resolution. But the one thing that clearly Republicans have going for them is the movement, the split in the Democratic Party that we saw exemplified in the primaries this week, where people like Congressman Moskowitz came out and won an election against a very hardcore socialist who was running against him, Mr. Larkin, almost 2-1. How do you think that's going to affect the midterms? I mean, it appears that they are winning some primaries at DSA, but when it comes to the general election in November, and a lot of independents who presumably are not too happy about this turn to the hard left by Democrats are going to be voting. How do you think the independents are going to take the actual midterms themselves?
Yeah, I don't. Most Americans, especially those in the middle, don't want to turn America into China or a communist country. And that's what this comes down to. The Democrats are wholly owned by the DSA, the Democrat Socialist wing of their party. I mean, at this point, I don't bet on elections, but if I were betting on elections, I would bet for the Democrat Socialists to win Democrat primaries because they own the Democrat Party. And each week we've seen them win primary elections. El Said in Michigan, Tallarico in Texas is a DSA Bernie-backed socialist running for Senate in Texas. And then you see the results in Florida this week, Minnesota. The socialists are winning. They've taken over the Democrat Party. They're winning their primaries, but they're not going to win in November because Americans don't want to turn this great country into a communist country.
Well,
the greatest country in the history of the world.
They did lose in Wisconsin in that Senate race with Ms. Hong. And as I mentioned, Jared Moskowitz won the primary where he was challenged by a DSA, really hardcore DSA loyalist. And I just want to play a little soundbite from Congressman Moskowitz talking about that race. Roll it.
I got people who live in the community that have, escaped Cuba and escaped Venezuela, have escaped socialism. They love this country, and they see, things on the DSA platform like abolish the Senate and abolish prisons and open borders, and they hear them talking about celebrating 100 years of Fidel Castro, and they just don't know what's going on.
Yeah, a lot of Americans don't know what's going on. They see the DSA platform, which not only calls for, socialist policies, but also, and not just defund the police, but defund the Pentagon. They're against an armed forces in the United States to protect this country from foreign invasions, et cetera.
Yeah, it's crazy. Jared Moskowitz and Tom Suozzi in New York and a few of the more common sense moderate Democrats circulated a pledge among their colleagues in Congress that said, we are capitalists, not socialists. We love America. We're not ashamed of America. We want law and order, not lawlessness. They circulated that pledge, and only 10 Democrats in the House out of 212 signed it. So when I'm talking about the socialists taking over the Democrat Party, I don't know what proves it more than that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Senator Jim Banks, great to see you, sir. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
Ambassador Monica Crowley is the Trump administration's representative to America 250, and she joins me now. Madam Ambassador, welcome back to the show. What can you tell me about President Trump's lap of honor around the track? I think he's taking the beast, isn't he?
Well, good morning, Stuart. You know, President Trump promised that this year would be the greatest and most momentous celebration for our history, for our country, and the history of America. And that's exactly what he's delivered over the past year, culminating this weekend in the IndyCar Freedom 250 Grand Prix. And yes, the president and the first lady will be taking an honorary lap prior to the race Sunday at about noon. 1 o'clock the race starts, and it will all air on Fox with pre-race coverage starting at 11:30. So everybody will be able to see the president and the first lady take that lap before 25 drivers get into their cars and race upwards of 200 miles an hour around the nation's capital. It's a once-in-a-lifetime experience, really tremendous, and a great celebration of the American competitive spirit and speed and innovation.
I'm told that, Ambassador, I'm told that you've got 288,000 people have signed up for tickets already. You're going to be pretty much jam-packed, aren't you?
Yes, indeed. So we actually had to cap the ticket lottery because so many people wanted tickets to this race. So over the 2 days, Saturday and Sunday being, of course, the final race. But we're expecting hundreds of thousands of additional people to descend on Washington, D.C. So this means a huge economic boom for our nation's capital, in addition to all of the events that we have done over the last year to celebrate our great America and our great exceptional history.
I have to ask you about the White House ballroom. Today's the deadline for the Supreme Court to decide whether President Trump can continue building the White House ballroom. The project's already far along. Would the administration consider stopping building it or even tearing it down if the court rules against it?
Well, I'm sure you've heard the president's remarks on this project. This project is so critical. It's not just about the ballroom, although as chief of protocol, I play a critical role in organizing a lot of these big events, and we do need the extra space. But more importantly, according to the president, this will be a necessary national security facility, providing essential command and control facilities, medical facilities, and essential protection for not just this president, Stuart, but all future presidents, their families, their staffs. All of these things are absolutely necessary for the White House complex and for all presidents to be able to function absolutely securely in this kind of new threat environment. So we hope and expect that the Supreme Court will see it that way. That is the primary issue in front of them. They also have the issue of standing, because a lot of attorneys agree that the woman and the group that brought this case in the first place really has no standing to do so. So unless the Supreme Court acts today, that construction injunction will remain in place. We hope that will not be the case. And I don't want to get in front of the president on this, but I do know that other options are in fact being considered because the president has committed to the completion of this project.
I just feel that the Democrats and the president's political opponents, they just don't like him, and they want to stop anything and everything that he wants to do, including the ballroom. That's where I'm coming from. I'm not sure you're able to say that yourself, but I think that's truth to me. Monica Crowley, Ambassador Crowley, what a pleasure to have you back on the show. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you.
We'll see you this weekend. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Stuart. You bet.
Joining me now is Pennsylvania Senator Dave McCormick. He sits on the Senate Banking Committee. Senator, good morning and welcome. What can you tell us about the status of negotiations on this bill? How did conversations end before recess? Since it's been renewed in the news cycle, crypto prices are rebounding after a pretty massive sell-off.
Well, I agree with the president. We need to vote and get this passed in the Senate. And I think it's important to step back and say why we should do this. This innovation, this opportunity, we want to make sure it happens in America. There's thousands of jobs in Pennsylvania and hundreds of thousands across the country that are driven by crypto and the innovations taking place. But this is also a framework that's going to protect consumers, ensure that we have the appropriate anti-fraud and terrorist financing protections. So this legislation is something we need to get done. It was voted out of the Banking Committee with bipartisan support. And now it's time to bring it to the floor and vote. And I think we'll get that vote very soon after we come back in September. And I'm encouraging my Democratic colleagues to vote for it. I think there's some open issues that we're working hard to resolve, and I'm optimistic we'll get this done.
Okay, well, the Senate also has limited time to advance more of the president's agenda before the midterms, and the Senate each rolling out its own versions of a third reconciliation package to provide funding for the military, farm relief, and implement the Save America Act policies. Senator, what do you think the Senate can actually get done realistically before the midterms? Because a lot of these points are key on voters' minds.
Well, when we left before the recess, we had passed the sanctions bill, we had passed the continuing resolution, and we had confirmed Todd Blanche. But frankly, I was very frustrated that we didn't have a chance to vote on a third reconciliation package. That is the path to getting Save America done. That is the path to getting additional funding, supplemental for our military and our intel, which we need at this moment when young men and women are abroad defending America's interest. And it does support, as you said, the supplemental for ag. I think we have to force that vote. I'm hoping we can do that when we get back, but we really must do it. This is the path to getting the Save America Act done. And frankly, that's something that Republicans and Democrats across the country agree on. And that reconciliation, of course, allows us to do that with a 51 vote majority. And that's what we need to do. And unfortunately, our Democratic colleagues have not supported that, despite it being an 80-20 issue with the American people for voter ID and voter registration. And so reconciliation is the path to do it. Our chairman of the Budget Committee, Ron Johnson, left, I think, for the recess with an assignment to come back to the caucus for a way that we can get a vote on that soon after getting back.
All right, well, I'm counting. It's 74 days away from the midterm elections, and the economy is top of mind for voters as well. Senator, you and your colleagues are trying to hold on to or even expand slim majorities in both chambers. You recently hosted a defense summit to help bring jobs and investments to Pennsylvania. How would you reassure voters that Republicans are working to help Americans' wallets, not just with more jobs and growth opportunities, but also on food costs, gas prices, the whole kitchen table set?
Well, I think the starting point is, listen, that there is no doubt that the American people, working families, are much better off under the Trump administration, the President Trump's leadership, than they were under the Biden administration. If you look at real wage growth, if you look at the opportunity we see as a result of the Working Families Tax Cut Act, more money is in the pockets of American families. But there's no doubt that there's still pressures on food prices, on inflation, gas prices, housing, and so forth. And so we need to stay the course. And so the most important thing we can do is unlock energy. And that's why I've been such an advocate of permitting reform. This is the biggest thing we could do to advance the president's agenda. There's about $1.5 trillion sitting on the sidelines as a result of permitting reform. It takes about 6 years to get approval for an energy project in America. It took about 3.5 years to win World War II. So permitting reform, I think, is the long pole in the tent in terms of continuing to advance our economy. Of course, we've had gas prices tick up as a result of action combat in Iran. And people in Pennsylvania are feeling that. So there's no doubt. But I think the message is they're much better off than they were by any measure. And there's great things continuing to come. That Defense and Innovation Summit, I mean, we announced $10 billion of new investment, 5,000 new jobs. That wouldn't have happened without President Trump's leadership. And that's happening across all of Pennsylvania and America.
I want to get a quick final one to you before we go. The EPA issuing a waiver expanding the gasoline supply to help bring costs down. Today's national average for a gallon of regular gasoline in this country, $4.10. Senator, voters are worried about these gas prices. How much is this going to help at the pump with the backdrop of the Iran war still in play?
Well, listen, I haven't had a chance to look closely at that executive order, but I appreciate the president doing everything he can to bring down gas prices. I think the two things that are happening, number one, the activity with Iran, and we see that there are ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz, not what they were before the war began, but that's a positive step forward. The president putting pressure on Iran with the blockade, I think, is an important advancement. And frankly, what I said before, permitting reform is the best way to ensure that energy prices are down for all Americans, and we got to get that done. And I think we can actually get a vote on that and potentially get that passed in this Congress.
Cut the red tape, make it easier. That definitely will help bring our supplies up in this country. Obviously, we could be higher in terms of production, but Joe Biden set us back, and President Trump is trying to make up that difference. Senator Dave McCormick, thank you so much. Great to see you this morning.
All right, John, the USS George Washington arriving in the Middle East to replace the Abraham Lincoln after more than 270 days at sea. All of this coming as President Trump launches an economic D-Day pressure campaign against Iran. Let's bring in General Joseph Vittel, former CENTCOM commander and retired four-star general. General, welcome to you. Good to have you here. First to this new U.S. carrier strike group, which has arrived there in the Middle East. This says there were some reports of concerns and questions. Secretary Pete Hegseth sharply criticized a lot of the media reporting around that. But there was reports of health struggles and supply issues aboard the Lincoln. Your thoughts as this new U.S. carrier strike group arrives there in the Middle East?
Yeah, thanks, Sandra. Good to be with you. Well, as the president kind of launches into this kind of economic strategy that we're orchestrating against Iran, really trying to financially strangle them and, of course, use economic coercion on all those that are supporting them, being able to continue to have credible military capability in the Middle East is going to be really important. And so the arrival of the George Washington, I think, is a good example of that. We're going to have to be prepared, because this is going to probably take some time, to continue to bring forces into the region. We want them to be at a high level of readiness. We want them to be able to enforce the blockade, and then be prepared to do the other things that may be necessary to back up this economic strangulation strategy.
Fair enough. Meanwhile, to this pressure campaign, what tools are left in the toolbox? This is President Trump yesterday talking to FBN's Ed Lawrence about new sanctions on Iran. Listen.
Well, we have things that we could sanction. We have very draconian sanctions, and we'll see what happens. Right now, the strait is open. A lot of boats are coming through. People aren't reporting that, and that may slow down a little bit at some point. But right now, a lot of boats are coming through. The naval blockade has been extremely effective.
How much more has to be done to where Iran is, reached a point of no return when it comes to their economic might?
Right. So, I think what has to happen is we have to demonstrate the ability to virtually go after every dollar that is supporting the regime. And this means we have to be prepared to go after banks and businesses and governments that are providing the support. We have to address the oil smuggling, the currency swaps, the cash transfers, the ship registries, all the other gray zone activities that are taking place that are keeping this government in Iran in place. And I think what that requires is not just this military sustainment that we talked about, but it requires real strong collaboration across the U.S. government. It requires good communication and planning with our partners, not only in the region, but internationally. And importantly, I think it means we're going to have to exercise some patience with this. It's going to take some time. It's going to take some time. So we have to have some political patience in this. And I think that starts with making sure that we continue to articulate a very clear message about what we're trying to do and be very disciplined in terms of that.
We know so far the reaction from Iran is that they've sort of dismissed this economic D-Day as a diversion. So are they looking at this as a serious threat to them? I'll give you a final thought on that.
Well, I think they have to look at this as a serious threat. 17 of the top 20 leaders in the regime are former IRGC, so they're pretty hardcore. They're going to try to ride this out. But the idea here is with this pressure, this is going to put more pressure on the population. That's the soft underbelly here, and they're going to have to respond to that at some particular point.
Yeah, as we do look at some of the hits that they have been taking to their economy throughout. General, always appreciate your time, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Well, Sandra, the U.S. is quietly breaking Iran's grip on the Strait of Hormuz. American forces reportedly protecting tankers moving some 10 million barrels of oil every day through the waterway as President Trump opens up another front threatening economic D-Day for countries that helped Tehran stay afloat. Let's bring in the former Defense Secretary, Mark Esper. Mr. Secretary, good to have you with us on the program. So here's what the president put out announcing all of this as he ramps up the economic stranglehold on Iran. He said, quote, "I'm announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. I am also announcing that any country that allows its financial institutions, businesses, airports, or government entities to provide any type of lifeline to Iran will itself face tremendous economic consequences." Is this the path to success with Iran?
Well, first of all, John, good to be with you with you and Sandra this afternoon. So, look, yes, I think this is a good idea. It's the least bad option. It is something, though, that will take us time and patience and discipline to effect. But look, I think there's a good chance it could pay off. But we will take time, and we will have to sacrifice a little bit. The Iranian people will sacrifice a little bit, but it's a far better option than committing ground troops, and it's a far better option than retreating from the strait and leaving it to Iran. So, look, I think we have to do this. I think the president putting out the word to other nations is important. As you know, China is one of the biggest buyers of Iranian oil and other goods. But other than that, it's mostly the countries bordering Iran that we have to focus on as well in order to really clamp down on Iran and tie up their economy.
The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, today was very confident that this will achieve success and really put an exclamation point on the point that the president made earlier. Listen to what he said here.
This is going to be the greatest coordinated economic isolation in the history of the world. And we are going to them and saying, you are either with us or against us. We are going to squash the economy of this murderous regime. It is a 1-2 punch. We have the blockade, and we are going to have the toughest sanctions in history. And I will tell you, this will work.
Yeah, you're either with us or against us. It's the echoes of the George Bush administration. And what the U.S. is doing, moving 10 to 15 million barrels of oil per day out of the Persian Gulf, does appear to be putting the lie to Iran's claim that it controls the Strait of Hormuz and further squeezes it.
Yeah, it certainly takes pressure off international markets too, right? So you're getting 10 million barrels out. It used to be 20 million a day before the conflict. We know that the Saudis are getting out through a pipeline that crosses the peninsula into the Red Sea. UAE is getting out some oil as well. So all these are good signs. It takes some pressure off of us and puts more pressure on them. But importantly, the fact that the U.S. Navy has them blockaded means that they can't sell oil, whether legitimately or on the black market. And so that denies them at least $435 million a day that they could use to buy more weapons, that they could fund their proxies, that they could support terrorist activities. I mean, the list goes on and on. But again, the key here is going to be coordinated pressure over time. I think it's, again, least bad option. We'll see whether it works in the long run. But I think if we can coordinate it and get everybody to cooperate, we can put a lot of pressure on this country and hopefully break their will.
Now, in terms of our force posture in the area, the USS Abraham Lincoln is steaming toward its home port of San Diego to be replaced by the George Washington, which I think is on station already after a shore leave in Da Nang, Vietnam, which is a fun place. They've got great fish restaurants there. But tell us about the fact that, the Lincoln was out for 9 months. Now the Washington's coming in. These deployments are going on much longer than anybody anticipated, and it does lead to fatigue among the troops.
It does. It's 9 months, which is 2 to 3 months longer than normal. It takes a lot of time. It seems to me that the Navy, made some mistakes logistically with regard to food and mail and things like that. That shouldn't happen. I put that on the United States Navy. But that's a long period of time. It's good to see the rotating ships. They have to, of course, do the same, and I'm sure they are with destroyers and other aircraft. But it does take a toll on the sailors, their families, the ships, maintenance. And so what we need to make sure is we have a sustainable plan that can keep this blockade and other resources in place, again, for a long period of time, because that's how long this will take if they're going to break their will eventually.
Hey, real quick, Mr. Secretary, are you concerned that we don't have a carrier group in the Western Pacific at the moment?
I am concerned, but I understand there's one departing the west coast of the United States here shortly, and should be in that theater in a matter of a couple weeks or so.
All right. So we'll backstop on that front. Mark Esper, the former Defense Secretary, good to have you on today, sir. It's been a while.
Thanks, John. Good to see you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube.
And catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
What President Trump is saying is, don't mistake patience for weakness. We are going to hit you, both Iran, their economy, their military has been decimated by President Trump's action. Their ability to get nuclear weapons has been decimated. But now we're going to look at all those people that are doing business and feeding billions of dollars into Iran's economy and say, you got to stop doing it or it's going to affect your economy too.
Not easy stuff, but here we go. The U.S. ramping up the pressure on Iran. President Trump announcing economic D-Day against the regime and threatening severe consequences for any country that helps Tehran with a financial lifeline. Let's get the news from Tel Aviv, and Trey Yinks is with us now. Trey.
Yeah, hey, Bill, good morning. Overnight, President Trump announced economic D-Day against Iran as he calls on other countries around the world to support the United States. The president indicated that if any country provides a financial lifeline to the Iranians, they'll face their own economic consequences. The president posting to Truth Social saying no one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. Tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today, I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale. On Wednesday, the president described the state of play amid reports that the United States is still overseeing vessels through a safe corridor out of the Strait of Hormuz to export millions of barrels of crude oil each day.
Well, we have things that we could sanction. We have very draconian sanctions, and we'll see what happens. Right now, the strait is open. A lot of boats are coming through. People aren't reporting that, and that may slow down a little bit at some point. But right now, a lot of boats are coming through. The naval blockade has been extremely effective.
The Iranians have responded to the president's comments overnight, with Iran's foreign minister saying the so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis, unprecedented debt, and surging interest costs. The foreign minister goes on to say doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide. Now, regional intelligence sources tell Fox News there are growing indications of economic hardship inside of Iran as a result of the U.S. naval blockade and economic isolation. Reports do indicate that inflation in Iran has reached 89%, with food prices up 164%. The conflict here is clearly shifting to economic warfare, but the question remains, will this pressure from the United States lead to an agreement or a return to war? Bill?
Yeah, thanks, Ray. You laid it out very well. Trey Yinks in Tel Aviv. Thank you. Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
And President Trump announcing an unprecedented pressure campaign targeting Iran's oil and finances. So he's calling it Economic D-Day and warns of economic consequences against any country that helps the regime. Iran's foreign minister shrugged it off. He said this on a post saying, Economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis, unprecedented debt, and surging interest costs. Doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide. Joining us now, Brent Sadler from the Heritage Foundation Center for National Security. We've had a lot of sanctions on Iran for many, many years. What would be different this time?
Yeah, well, the first thing is the blockade on the shipping. That is a new wrinkle. That's not something that's been done before. But it's not enough, and it's going to require the military presence that's there to stay and perhaps be proactively going after threats rather than waiting for an attack to respond to an attack on shipping. But when they're talking about a new economic D-Day, the expectation is they're going to be even more sharper economic sanctions going after second order sanctions on other countries that do trade with them. But countries like Russia and China, they're not going to be affected as much. So there's going to have to be also perhaps a kinetic element to this economic warfare or statecraft.
What do you mean by kinetic?
Going after shipping is one of those that you're seeing right now. Kinetic, like vessel boarding and seizures of the dark fleet, that's been going on since late last year and has been picking up with more countries participating. But that needs to also probably be ramped up, not just coming in and out of the Straits of Hormuz, but wherever there is shipping that's benefiting or those that are doing business with the Iranians need to start getting interdicted.
Okay, the Israelis have said this to Fox News. This is the intelligence official saying that we are seeing indication that Iran's ability to continue funding its proxies is coming under strain.
Iran sends billions of dollars to its net proxy network, so the assessment is that sustained economic pressure on Iran could ultimately starve its entire proxy network, choking out the financial lifeline that keeps the entire network alive. And if you don't mind, let me just also mention this, Brent. The pressure on Iran is something I want to read to you about UAE. It's intensifying economic pressure to discourage Iranian efforts to control or disrupt navigation to the Strait of Hormuz. That's what you just said. And Iran will likely respond to the UAE's decision with greater military and economic pressure against the UAE rather than abandon its efforts to secure greater control over the Strait of Hormuz. How will that go? It's like a game of chicken between the UAE and the Iranians.
Well, the UAE is acting now somewhat under, and I would say it wasn't really necessary, U.S. pressure, because the Iranians have been attacking. The largest number of missiles been directed at the UAE in this conflict. So I think it was inevitable that the UAE, at the right time for them, to sever all these economic ties. With regards to the proxy, that's another venue in which the kinetic action to actually have an economic angle to it also can play out. And I think as we take a more economic in the lead and the blockade being sustained rather than threatening wholesale strikes across Iran, I think going after and further isolating and degrading the proxies, this is one of the levers that the regime in Tehran still has. That also has to be a prime target. And I think rather than letting up, the intensity of the attacks against these proxies, like the Houthis, of course, those in Iraq, also need to be stepped up.
Brent, we know that the Iranians don't care about the suffering of the people of Iran, and the regime leaders, they continue to, maybe they're not living in luxury, but we know that the economic pressure on the Iranian people has been really devastating already. Do we have any insight as to how much pain the regime can withstand? Because I know that the people are afraid to come out because they will just be mowed down, but I'm wondering if you have any insight into the regime's basically capacity to take more hits on the economic front.
Yeah, two things. So there are a lot of Iranians and family members that are living in extreme luxury in Europe and even in the United States. And so going after that's, I think, something to be spoken to on the economic front. But on the people side, the thing to look for is when the police, the IRGC members and elements of them start to defect in greater numbers or don't enforce the diktat out of Tehran, that'll be an indication that the resources to maintain power in Iran is starting to break.
Brent, thanks for being here today. As this development continues, we'll look and see what Economic D-Day results in. Thank you so much.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One. All right, President Trump announcing a crushing pressure campaign targeting Iran's oil and finances. He's calling it Economic D-Day and warning any nations giving a lifeline will face massive economic consequences as well. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise joins us now. How important is this and showing patience right now with Iran?
Well, Brian, first, great to be with you. And what President Trump has done is, he's shown patience. You had the 60-day ceasefire, but every step of the way you see Iran violating all the terms of that. And so what President Trump is saying is, don't mistake patience for weakness. We are going to hit you, both Iran, their economy, their military has been decimated by President Trump's action. Their ability to get nuclear weapons has been decimated. But now we're going to look at all those people that are doing business and feeding billions of dollars into Iran's economy and say, you got to stop doing it or it's going to affect your economy too.
But I see that what they're going to be doing now is they're going to be potentially punishing non-Iranian banks that do deals with Iran, shipping firms that do deals with Iran, insurers, as well as refiners, traders, ports, and governments that facilitate Iranian commerce. So that is the Treasury Secretary making offensive moves. But does it bother you that the Russians seeming to be are determined to rearm them and have been rearming them through the Caspian Sea?
Yeah, and I mean, look, we've got our own problems with Russia. Russia's got its own problems internally. I mean, Ukraine is making a really strong stand right now against Russia. They're hitting a lot more facilities. I hope they keep doing that, by the way. But Russia's on their knees. You don't want to see them getting involved in Iran, but Russia's exposed their weaknesses as well.
So we got a gas up $1 where it was roughly from a year ago. If you get that gas price going in the right direction, it could really result in your fortune changing for the better on midterms. I know you talk to the president quite often. Is there a plan in place if the economic sanctions are taking too long to hit him again?
Well, if you look, a lot of the economic indicators are getting better, but they're not where we want them to be, Brian. But I'll tell you what, whether you look at gas prices, if you look at all the costs that you want to track, costs at the grocery store, they're all coming down from where they were under President Biden because of the work we've been doing with President Trump to make life more affordable for working families. What we did on the tax code to really benefit working families. Again, the benefits of that tax policy helps mostly 70% of the benefits go to families making under $100,000 a year. No tax on overtime. 30 million Americans have taken that. That's like $4,000 more in your pocket. No tax on tips, of course. Seniors got a big tax benefit. And every Democrat voted no because they want that money up in Washington. And we saw the fraud, by the way. We cut fraud in places like Minneapolis. You know what a Leering Center is because we cut fraud. We took that fraud, $20 billion of stolen money, your tax dollars, just in Minneapolis. And that's what we use to go and put money back in the pockets of working families. That's reducing costs. And it's also increasing wages, Brian. Again, we're not where we want to be. We have a lot more work to do. But the socialist agenda, takes us in the opposite direction. And that's on the ballot this November.
I mean, how do you make the most of that? It's not hypothetical. You have a socialist who's got the nomination in Michigan. He says he's not a socialist, but he certainly acts like that. You have another one get the Democratic nomination in Florida. So what's the Republicans' mission when they run against the socialists?
Well, look, the choice is really clear November 3rd. It is common sense versus crazy. I was in Michigan last week campaigning with a number of our candidates. My colleague and dear friend John James, who's running for governor. You got Mike Rogers, who's leading right now against Al Sayed, who's their Senate candidate, who's a socialist as well, really to the left. He's running to the left of some of the DSA candidates in his socialist agenda. And it's a bunch of mini mandamis all around. It's not just one or two here or there. That is what the House will look like if the Democrats get the majority. And Brian, people are getting this everywhere I go. I was in Iowa last week, Middle America. I was in North and South Carolina this week. Everybody understands what's at stake and why everybody needs to vote November 3rd.
And because if they do get the majority, because the socialists have won, and they'll have a tremendous amount of power over whoever is the leader there. So they will be really the agenda.
They'll write the agenda.
Absolutely.
The DSA agenda will be America's agenda, and America doesn't want that. But everybody's got to vote and make their voices heard.
Steve Scalise, thanks so much. Appreciate you coming
Great being with you. Thanks.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
As Senator John Ossoff takes a page out of Gavin Newsom's playbook as he tries to out-Trump Trump with personal insults.
Lucas Tomlinson is live outside of the White House with the details for us. Hey, Lucas.
Good morning, Ainsley. Good morning, fellows. Well, some eyebrows were raised when Democratic Senator John Ossoff, who some see as a Democratic hopeful for president in 2028, made the following comments on Sunday.
He doesn't want to do the job. He wants to build his ballroom and travel with Natalie on their apparently defenseless flying palace gifted by the Emir of Qatar.
So who is Natalie Harp, the 35-year-old presidential aide seen every day by the president's side, armed with multiple laptops and 3 to 4 mobile phones? In 2019, Harp went on Fox and thanked President Trump for signing the right to try law. She said that she had stage 2 bone cancer and that the new law allowed her to access experimental treatments, which she said saved her life. And after hearing about her experience, President Trump asked her to speak at the 2020 Republican convention. She was one of the select few chosen to accompany the president when he was sneaked off Air Force One in Turkey last month. Now, not all Democrats are okay with Senator Ossoff's comments. Here is President Obama's former chief strategist, David Axelrod, posting, "No one has been more consistently eloquent or incisive in exposing Donald Trump than Ossoff. The paragraph from his weekend speech that's gotten so much attention was a brutal takedown. But 2 words in it with Natalie seemed gratuitous and unnecessary. The juice, the virality of it, I'm sure, probably thrilled some in the base, which figured it was just giving Trump a taste of his own nasty medicine. But they detracted from the power of the message." Now, Ossoff is running for re-election in Georgia. Back in 2016, Georgia had 2 Republican senators. Today, 1. And the White House is pushed back strongly on Senator Ossoff's comments, guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate it, Lucas. And John Ossoff showing he's running for president.
Yeah,
reason. Number 2 is you're running against Michael Collins, and he calls him a white supremacist. What are you, an idiot? There's nothing a white supremacist about him. He's just a successful businessman. And number two is, why are you bringing up a great assistant to the President of the United States? So irresponsible to bring that up. And you're not running against President Trump. I have news for you. Tell that to Gavin Newsom. All his ripping on Donald Trump has gotten him nowhere. He's fourth in the polls. If Trump was on the ballot, if Trump was going to run again, I could see a strategy. But you're running against somebody that's you're not even relevant to him. You're in the minority. You're not doing anything legislatively. And now you just want to throw out barbs in order to get another 6 years as a senator.
Yeah, President Trump surrounds himself by very strong, engaged women who are very good at their job.
Unbelievable.
It's unbelievable how many people he surrounds himself with like this. And then John Ossoff wants to attack her because she's attractive. That's the reason why he attacked her, and then accuses her of having an affair. It's disgusting. And I thought it was really interesting watching him backpedal. As soon as he got into it, and it reveals two things. One is...
You mean with Jen Psaki?
With Jen Psaki. One, he's very stupid for saying it in the first place. It was in his speech. They thought about it. They put it in there purposefully because he wanted to be daring. And so he does that. But then he chickens and starts backpedaling when he goes on MS Now. And that was one of the weakest performances I've ever seen. I think that this incident ripped the mask off. There are a lot of Democrats who think he's their great hope for 2028.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Out of the Middle East, President Trump is planning an unprecedented pressure campaign targeting Tehran's oil and finances.
The commander-in-chief calling it economic D-Day as he warns any country that attempts to help Iran, threatening tremendous economic consequences.
Chief foreign correspondent Trey Yingst is live in Tel Aviv with more. Hey, Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Overnight, President Trump announced what he is calling economic D-Day against Iran. The president indicated that any country around the world providing a lifeline to the Iranians could face economic consequences of their own. He called on allies to stand with the United States, posting to Truth Social, "No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. Tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale." On Wednesday, the president described the state of play amid reports that the United States is still overseeing vessels through a safe corridor to export millions of barrels of oil out of the Persian Gulf each day.
Well, we have things that we could sanction. We have very draconian sanctions, and we'll see what happens. Right now, the strait is open. A lot of boats are coming through. People aren't reporting that, and that may slow down a little bit at some point. But right now, a lot of boats are coming through. The naval blockade has been extremely effective.
The Iranians have responded to the president's comments overnight, with Iran's foreign minister saying the so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis. Unprecedented debt and surging interest costs. Doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide. Regional intelligence sources tell Fox News there are growing indications of economic hardship inside of Iran as a result of the U.S. naval blockade and economic isolation. Reports indicate that inflation in Iran has reached 89%, with food prices up 164%. The conflict is clearly shifting to economic warfare. The question here, whether or not this pressure will ultimately result in a deal or a return to combat operations. Guys?
So we know, Trey, that UAE supplies 31% of Iran's imports, roughly $21 billion in 2024. And was destined to have 13% of its exports this year, and they've now cut off all trade after shooting at their ships one time too many with Iran. Is that significant?
It's very significant, and it's an indication that Gulf countries may start to take similar economic action against the Iranians. And remember what happened earlier this week. Iran reportedly launched 2 ballistic missiles at the UAE, triggering alerts there and sending millions of people to seek shelter. and they have routinely attacked a number of Emirati oil vessels off the coast there in the Persian Gulf over the past week. It's an indication that the Iranians are still launching attacks near the Strait of Hormuz. And while the president says the waterway is open, only about 10% of the vessels that are supposed to be passing through this critical waterway are actually making it out of the Persian Gulf. There is this parallel story that's quite important. The president has indicated to Fox News that they are still getting oil out of the Persian Gulf. And so they have a safe corridor to the southern part of the Strait of Hormuz, and they're able to export millions of barrels of crude oil each and every day. And this operation is expected to continue. And it's an indication that due to the U.S. naval blockade and the U.S. military presence in the region, they are still able to escort some of these vessels out of the Gulf.
Okay. And this, thank you, Charlie, at the top where the Persian Gulf is on that map. How does the president plan to squeeze them even harder? What would be ideal is to squeeze them so hard that they have to give up their nuclear weapons. They just say, fine, take them, we'll give them to you, we'll get them out of here because we're in such dire straits. But how much more? What else could the president do? Because he even said in that tweet yesterday, the Navy's gone, Air Force destroyed, military factories rebel, currency is worthless, country is hanging on by a thread. You mentioned inflation, you talked about food prices. What more could our president do?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have to look at the facts on the ground here. And when we step back and we look at the situation for the Iranians, much of their Navy was destroyed during Operation Epic Fury. Many of the production lines for the missiles and drones inside of Iran were targeted. But the Iranians still do have a military industrial base. They have missiles, drones, cruise missiles that they can use not only to attack the Gulf, but also U.S. forces in the region and possibly even Israel in the future. And so the U.S. military remains on alert. And you have one side of the coin here that is focused on military pressure, the U.S. naval blockade, and the ability of President Trump if he orders future strikes. On the other side, you have the economic warfare campaign. And this is, you could look at this broadly like an onion. At the center here, you have the U.S. naval blockade, and this is preventing the Iranians from their critical lifeline, and that is their oil exports. But then you have secondary sanctions that are already in place, and there are discussions at the U.S. Treasury from Scott Bessent to try and target some of the countries that actually use Iranian oil, such as the Chinese and these companies that are still trying to find creative ways to get around the sanctions and the U.S. economic pressure. And that's part of the reason that President Trump last night ordered what he is calling economic D-Day, because he wants to send a message to countries around the world that if they try to skirt these sanctions or U.S. efforts to pressure the Iranian regime, that they will face economic consequences of their own.
So obviously, Iran has been isolated militarily and economically, and we're going to ratchet up the economic isolation now. Do you have any sense how long? It's kind of mind-boggling that Iran has managed to hang on, given the amount of isolation that they have faced over the last 8 or 9 months. Do you have any sense how long Iran can hang on with this kind of isolation?
We don't. And this is a game of who blinks first. And the Iranians feel confident in their position. But we have to look at their statements. They continue to make this threatening rhetoric from Tehran about their military capabilities in the region and the economic, what they consider warfare against their country. When we look at the Iranians, though, they have prepared for this reality. And we have to face the facts of the situation. Not only on a military front, they prepared this mosaic defense, ensuring that if their top commanders were taken out, that others could fill the shoes. And that's exactly what they have done. According to reports in the Wall Street Journal, for example, over the past 2 months, they have not been so focused on finding a diplomatic off-ramp. Rather, they've been preparing for the possibility of a return to combat. And that means putting these hardline IRGC officials in positions where they can make decisions to threaten international shipping and put counter pressure on the United States, its forces in the region, and Gulf allies. And that is exactly what is taking place. And that's part of the reason that you have seen this, what really feels like an endless cycle of statements and strikes in the Middle East with no end in sight.
Yep, I've got a million more questions for you, Trey. I guess we'll wait for next hour. I appreciate all the insight as everybody watches in the region. Trey Yingst, thank you.
Trey.
Thanks, Trey. Meanwhile,
be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
And now to the Iran conflict. President Trump is planning an unprecedented pressure campaign targeting Tehran's oil and finances, which he is calling economic D-Day.
Chief Foreign Correspondent Trey Yingst live in Tel Aviv to explain what that could mean. Trey.
Yeah, hey guys, good morning. Overnight, President Trump announced what he is calling economic D-Day against Iran. The president indicated that any countries around the world that are providing any sort of economic lifeline to the Iranian regime would face their own economic consequences. He called on allies to stand with the United States, posting to Truth Social, "No one has given the Islamic Republic of Iran a greater opportunity to make a deal than me. Tragically for them, they have failed to take it. Therefore, today I am announcing the most crushing economic operation ever taken against any country. This will be economic warfare and isolation on an unprecedented scale." On Wednesday, the president described the state of play amid reports that the United States is still overseeing vessels through a safe corridor to export millions of barrels of oil out of the Persian Gulf each day.
But the deal didn't terminate. The deal didn't turn out to be what they said. When they tell us one thing and they do another. But the blockade has been 100% successful. No boats have gotten into Iran, but they are getting in for other places. But we'll see. We're going to see what happens.
The Iranians have responded to the president's comments overnight, with Iran's foreign minister saying the so-called economic D-Day is a diversion from America's own crisis. Unprecedented debt and surging interest costs. Doubling down on failed policies will only bring further defeat and enmity of Iranians. U.S. economic terrorism threatens global economy and sovereignty worldwide. Now, regional intelligence sources tell Fox News that there are growing indications of economic hardship inside of Iran as a result of the U.S. naval blockade and economic isolation. Reports indicate that inflation in Iran has reached 89%, with food prices up 164%. The conflict is clearly shifting to economic warfare, and the question now is whether or not this pressure will lead to a deal or a return to war. Guys?
Trey Yingst live for us in Tel Aviv. Trey, thank you.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
Breaking tonight, President Trump says negotiations with Iran will resume, maybe, at some point. He says the situation right now is, quote, so good. Fox News is told the president has asked his team not to engage until Iran is really ready to make a deal. The president addressed technology leaders this afternoon. Correspondent Lucas Tomlinson reports tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Lucas.
Good evening, Brett. President Trump shifting his focus away from Iran today to the South Lawn of the White House, where he showed off the new helipad and later hosted leaders from the crypto industry.
We're ensuring that America remains the undisputed leader, not only in Bitcoin and crypto, but also technologies like prediction markets, artificial intelligence, and much more.
President Trump hosting crypto executives at the White House today, pressing Congress to pass new legislation to help the U.S. stay ahead of China. The president had Beijing on his mind when he toured the new White House helipad this afternoon, including signing the granite along with construction workers and members of the military.
This is going to be used for a lot of different celebrations. President Xi is coming in a little while, a couple of weeks.
While taking questions from reporters on Iran, the president downplayed the Strait of Hormuz, which he now calls new U.S. territory.
People have found other alternatives, which they never thought about. Texas, Alaska, Louisiana, and other places. The Hormuz Strait's not going to be quite as important as it was in the past.
After Iran fired missiles at the United Arab Emirates, the UAE says it has halted all trade and financial transactions with Iran.
There is nuisance value when they shoot a drone every once in a while.
At least 6 commercial vessels have been attacked this month while transiting the strait, including one this week. U.S. and regional officials say for now, the naval blockade and economic pressure will continue. It's a question of who blinks first, they say.
Iran is trying to drive up the cost for the United States and our allies by disrupting trade in the Strait of Hormuz.
While Trump says talks with Iran could resume in the future, the president said he's also looking to restart talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, I will be.
And provided an intelligence estimate on how many nukes North Korea has.
He has 57 very powerful nuclear weapons.
To deal with threats from North Korea and China right now, the U.S. Navy does not have an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. Brett?
And Lucas, President Trump was supposed to levy tariffs on Canada today, but didn't. What happened?
That's right, Brett. The president was supposed to levy 50% tariffs on Canada today, but today he instituted a 3-day pause because he thinks a deal is close.
We've come to a deal with Canada. As you know, the 50% tariffs across the board were going on against Canada today. And they called yesterday and they gave us the points that we had to have. Very fair deal for both.
The president also said the Keystone XL pipeline might be making a comeback. Brett?
Lucas Thompson, live in the North Lawn. Lucas, thanks.
The Justice Department says they have uncovered a massive Iranian cyber spying operation targeting America. 17 Iranians now accused of stealing a trove of sensitive information from U.S. schools, businesses, and government agencies. Correspondent Alexandria Hoff, live at the White House with all the details for us. Hi, Alex.
Hi, John. The scope of this scam, absolutely massive. In academia alone, the DOJ says that over 100,000 university professors worldwide were targeted, with 31 terabytes of critical information, research, and intellectual property stolen and then sold within Iran. Now, the DOJ says that 144 U.S.-based universities were targeted, along with 42 private sector companies, 5 federal and state agencies, including the Department of Labor, and at least 2 NGOs as well. This began in 2013, and the original 2018 indictment charged 9 individuals. Yesterday's action added 8 new defendants and revealed a much larger state-sponsored plot, with the hackers allegedly operating on behalf of the Iranian government. In a statement, the Justice Department assures these charges make clear that the passage of time will not deter us from identifying and pursuing those who target the United States from abroad. And federal investigators say one tactic that these hackers used was specifically reaching out to individual professors. They would pose as an academic peer, saying that they were interested in their research. Hey, could you check mine out? Send them to a fake portal where the professor's credentials would then be compromised. John?
At that point, the UAE is cutting trade and financial ties with Iran after intercepting 2 Iranian missiles. But Tehran denies the attack, calling the claim, quote, completely unfounded. Now Iran is reportedly considering strikes on U.S. military assets in Europe if President Trump escalates the conflict. Meanwhile, President Trump was asked about reopening talks with Iran earlier today.
Maybe at some point, but right now, I think the situation is so good, but maybe at some point. Look, it's very simple. They have to get rid of no nuclear weapons. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. You know why? Because they'd use it.
All right, let's bring in retired 2-star Marine Corps General Arnold Punaro. General, it's great to see you. So the president seems quite comfortable to let Iran twist in the wind. In addition to that statement, he put this out on True Social yesterday. He said there are no talks or conversations going on or scheduled with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The naval blockade remains in full force in effect. The Hormuz Strait is open and operating. All water mines have been removed or detonated. He feels like he's in the catbird seat here.
John, before getting to that very important topic, I want to compliment you, Sandra and Fox, for that very powerful segment you just did about the mother that was murdered in Great Falls. That's in our backyard. You and I know that area well. And those of us that are Fairfax residents, we have an obligation when we vote for law enforcement personnel and prosecutors, we vote people in that are going to crack down on these areas. In terms of your answer about Iran, I would have said before you made all those comments, we were in a protracted stalemate, but obviously Iran is escalating. They clearly attacked the UAE. I don't care if they denied it, they did it. The UAE has stopped trade, as your segment said, billions of dollars a year. Iran is still attacking ships in the Straits of Hormuz, although they claim the straits are open, and we take that same position. The Wall Street Journal's most recent analysis is prior to the conflict, 130 ships a day. Now it's a trickle, maybe 3 to 4 on a good day, 6. And now Iran is threatening they're going to escalate against U.S. targets outside of the Middle East area of operations into southern Europe. If they attack a U.S. target in a NATO nation, they just triggered Article 5. 32 nations then will be at a war with Iran. And so I would say they're making a big mistake thinking that they have the upper hand. They don't have the upper hand. The president is correct to keep the economic and maritime pressure on, and time is on our side.
General Jack Keane, I know he's not Marines, but he agrees wholeheartedly with you about Iran maybe going to shoot itself in the foot by doing that. Listen to what he said here.
The Iranians are about to miscalculate, and they've done it before with this president. And they believe that being more aggressive, being more violent to create the image that this war is not working right and it's going to cause him political damage, he's not going to stand for that. I believe they'll go after everything that they value. What do they really value? What they value the most is all their oil and gas infrastructure. And I think that's very likely that we would take that down once and for all.
As I said, the president at the moment thinks that he's got time on his side. The price of oil is high, but not that high. Iran is sort of getting frantic here about trying to get the attention of the president. He's just really kind of not paying attention to them. But if they do go this extra mile, as you said, an attack on NATO, one nation is an attack on all, could trigger an Article 5 response. But at the very latest, Iran claims that it's trying to put together a coalition of some other countries against the United States, but it looks like the world's against them at this point.
No question about it. And I have immense respect for General Jack King, longstanding colleague of many of us. By the way, he's the first person maybe 10 years ago that publicly talked about the threat from China. I think his analysis is spot on. I would say that if Iran thinks, because of the mid-year politics, the president's going to blink or not, keep the pressure on, I think they're just sadly mistaken. And I don't see them getting anybody on their side. When you attack your allies and your neighbors that you trade with, that's not a very smart move. When you talk about triggering Article 5 in NATO, that would be one of the most foolhardy military things I could think of.
Yeah, well, they don't seem to be too bright these days. In addition to this attack against the UAE, the other day, the office of Masroor Barzani, who is the Kurdish leader, the prime minister in Iraq, was attacked by Hadid 110 drones, which are Iranian stealth drones. Abbas Araghchi, the foreign minister, went on X to say, we didn't do this. This is a complete false flag. But clearly it was an Iranian attack.
Absolutely. And again, they're so foolish. Why would you mess with the Kurds? I would not want to tangle with the Kurds.
Yeah, I thought they seem to be just miscalculating left, right, and center.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see where it goes. General, thanks for joining us. And
always a privilege.
Appreciate it. Now this.
So now, 34 past the hour, President Trump saying there are no talks with Iran or any conversations in the works. This comes as the Wall Street Journal reports that Iran's mounting aggression in the Strait is pushing the buttons of the U.S. military. Fox News contributor Dan Hoffman, former CIA chief of stations, and Dan, good to see you. This month alone, UAE reports that 7 ships have been targeted. That's higher than 0. And at one point during this conflict, that would simply have not been acceptable. What is your read on as to why?
Well, Iran is trying to drive up the cost for the United States and our allies by disrupting trade in the Strait of Hormuz. And they feel like if they can impose significant costs on us, that they can withstand the costs we're imposing on them through the blockade. Iran has continued to make maximalist demands. There are no negotiations going on because Iran is demanding that we remove the blockade, that we release their frozen funds, eliminate sanctions, and stop conducting military activity in the region. Obviously, the Trump administration isn't going to do that. I think what President Trump is doing is asking his intelligence community whether we are pushing Iran to the breaking point with our economic pressure, or whether we are looking at a long-term economic war of attrition.
Okay, so then we go to others in the region. And others in the region include Vladimir Putin, all right? Institute for the Study of War, Jack Keene's group, among others, says Russia has continued to provide direct military support to Iran through weapons and weapons components transfers. They're talking about the Caspian Sea in terms of resupply. What do you think of that, or how do you view that? And also, what about the targeting ability of Iran's military? They have proven to be actually quite accurate, more so than a lot of people would think. Where's that come from, other than Putin?
Yeah, so Russia is strongly aligned with China, North Korea, and Iran. And Russia's currency is intelligence. They supply Iran with satellite intelligence derived from human sources as well, so that Iran can more effectively target our bases in the region. Vladimir Putin wants the United States to be tied up in the Middle East, and he wants the oil prices to continue to go up. That helps Russia with the extent to which they export oil. They'll earn more money to be able to conduct their war, their barbaric war on Ukraine.
In the meantime, he's blaming NATO for what's happening in Kyiv, right? And on that rolls. So, I mean, it seems to be all interconnected. And Putin would have great incentive to keep the United States involved in the Strait of Hormuz and Iran for some time. Move further east. This may have surprised a lot of people. Here we go again. Here's the headline. President Trump pushes for Kim Jong-un to have a meeting this year. That's the headline. I was watching the Reuters wire a short time ago. His sister says that the Trump and Kim relationship is, quote, truly excellent. What is your read on this? What would they have to talk about? And isn't North Korea helping Iran as well during this conflict?
North Korea has been an ally of Iran for a long time, providing Iran with military technology, missile technology. They're also providing Russia with artillery and reportedly planning to send 50,000 troops to augment Russia's ongoing attacks on Ukraine. I think we have to be careful not to conflate whatever personal relationship the president has with Kim Jong-un with the fact that North Korea is an ally of China and Russia and Iran, and whose interests are antithetical to ours in the region. We have to be careful about risking any appearance of placating Kim Jong-un so that we can get to the negotiating table. I think Kim Jong-un is perfectly happy to sit down with the President of the United States and be perceived as a leader in the world who can go toe-to-toe with President Trump. But as we saw in 2018, those might result in summits, but they might not result in real agreements which would serve our national security. That's where the challenge is. I think that's where the president needs to be asking Director CIA Ratcliffe whether North Korea is interested in making a deal. There's no evidence that they are. Okay. They've been increasing their nuclear arsenal, their ballistic missile arsenal, and threatening South Korea as well as the United States.
Okay, third week in September, President Xi expected to the White House, and we'll see whether or not this Chairman Kim meeting comes following that. Thank you, Dan. Good to get your perspective on all of that. Dan Hoffman, thanks.
Breaking tonight, President Trump says negotiations with Iran will resume maybe at some point. He says the situation right now is, quote, so good. Fox News has told the president has asked his team not to engage until Iran is really ready to make a deal. The president addressed technology leaders this afternoon. Correspondent Lucas Tomlinson reports tonight live from the North Lawn. Good evening, Lucas.
Good evening, Brett. President Trump shifting his focus away from Iran today to the South Lawn of the White House, where he showed off the new helipad and later hosted leaders from the crypto industry.
We're ensuring that America remains the undisputed leader, not only in Bitcoin and crypto, but also technologies like prediction markets, artificial intelligence, and much more.
President Trump hosting crypto executives at the White House today, pressing Congress to pass new legislation to help the U.S. stay ahead of China. The president had Beijing on his mind when he toured the new White House helipad this afternoon, including signing the granite along with construction workers and members of the military.
This is going to be used for a lot of different celebrations. President Xi is coming in a little while, a couple of weeks.
While taking questions from reporters on Iran, the president downplayed the Strait of Hormuz, which he now calls new U.S. territory.
People have found other alternatives, which they never thought about. Texas, Alaska, Louisiana, and other places. The Hormuz Strait's not going to be quite as important as it was in the past.
After Iran fired missiles at the United Arab Emirates, the UAE says it has halted all trade and financial transactions with Iran.
There is nuisance value when they shoot a drone every once in a while.
At least 6 commercial vessels have been attacked this month while transiting the strait, including one this week. U.S. and regional officials say for now, the naval blockade and economic pressure will continue. It's a question of who blinks first, they say.
Iran is trying to drive up the cost for the United States and our allies by disrupting trade in the Strait of Hormuz.
While Trump says talks with Iran could resume in the future, the president said he's also looking to restart talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un.
Yeah, I will be.
And provided an intelligence estimate on how many nukes North Korea has.
He has 57 very powerful nuclear weapons.
To deal with threats from North Korea and China right now, the U.S. Navy does not have an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. Brett?
And Lucas, President Trump was supposed to levy tariffs on Canada today, but didn't. What happened?
That's right, Brett. The president was supposed to levy 50% tariffs on Canada today, but today he instituted a 3-day pause because he thinks a deal is close.
We've come to a deal with Canada. As you know, the 50% tariffs across the board were going on against Canada today. And they called yesterday and they gave us the points that we had to have. Very fair deal for both.
The president also said the Keystone XL pipeline might be making a comeback. Brett?
Lucas Thompson, live in the North Lawn. Lucas, thanks.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
This morning, socialists in the Sunshine State cheering as their Senate candidate wins a major upset against a Schumer-backed former Soviet Jewish refugee who outspent her by a nearly 17-1 margin. Our next guest, a lifelong Democrat who served under Bill Clinton, warning his party the DSA is an anti-American hate group, and he's petitioning Democrat leaders to condemn and oppose candidates like these. Jamie Metzel joins us now. It's so great to see you this morning, Jamie. Thank you for joining us. So, for a while there, we were told that these DSA candidates were only going to play in deep blue areas. But now we've seen in swing states like Michigan and Wisconsin, and now in a pretty red state like Florida, where Angie Nixon actually pulled off a win.
Yeah, so the state may be red, but the Democratic primary voters are not red. And in my view, this is extremely dangerous, not just for the Democratic Party, but for our country. Our country is the beneficiary of are we on live? I'm sorry.
Oh, yes. Yeah, go ahead. No,
okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Our country is the beneficiary of having a strong two-party system, and that means we need two patriotic parties uniting to make America a better place for everybody. And if the Democratic Party is veering to the far left with these unelectable DSA candidates, even if a majority of the small number of primary voters choose them, I think it's going to be bad for the party and bad for the country. And we see there are extremists on both sides of the political spectrum, but the January 6 Republicans have lost their primaries, and the October 7 Democrats, in many cases, are winning there. So it's, in my view, it's very bad news.
Well, and I think you make such a profound and important point there, because I'm more on the conservative side of things, but I desperately want a healthy, vibrant, sane Democrat Party. And as you point out, a lot of these candidates are not delivering there. In the case of Angie Nixon in Florida, so she managed to topple the more centrist, the more establishment candidate. How's this going to look in November?
I think Angie Nixon has basically no chance of winning the Senate race in November. And so the Democratic Party had a very strong centrist candidate in Alex Vindman. He's a military veteran, a refugee, a very courageous former White House official, someone who I know and deeply admire, who could have run very, very strongly in a still, it's leaning Republican, but still in some ways a swing state like Florida. And now we have Angie Nixon, who is a far left, unelectable, fringe extremist candidate who has no chance in November. And if we're electing these kinds of extremist candidates, this is great news for President Trump, but I think it's bad news for American democracy, because we benefit by, again, as I said, having two strong, patriotic, common sense American parties, and then we can have the exchange of ideas and let the best and most popular ideas emerge.
Real quickly, what do you think Democrat voters who share your views on this in places like Michigan and Florida, what are they going to do in November when they're faced with the choice between a Republican and a socialist?
Well, I'm getting a lot of messages from friends in different places in Michigan and Florida who are saying, I just will not vote for these fringe candidates. So maybe they'll vote Republican, maybe they won't vote. And I think that's really unfortunate, because our country, we have great challenges at home and abroad. And, there are challenges coming from the left and coming from the right, but the majority of Americans are common sense centrists who think that we need to come together like we've done in the past to solve problems in spite of our differences, and that's where our politics needs to be.
Jamie Metzel, thank you so much.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.
Alex.
Hi, John. The scope of this scam, absolutely massive. In academia alone, the DOJ says that over 100,000 university professors worldwide were targeted with 31 terabytes of critical information, research, and intellectual property stolen and then sold within Iran. Now, the DOJ says that 144 U.S.-based universities were targeted, along with 42 private sector companies, 5 federal and state agencies, including the Department of Labor, and at least 2 NGOs as well. This began in 2013, and the original 2018.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.
And the UAE is cutting trade and financial ties with Iran after intercepting 2 Iranian missiles. But Tehran denies the attack, calling the claim, quote, completely unfounded. Now Iran is reportedly considering strikes on U.S. military assets in Europe if President Trump escalates the conflict. Meanwhile, President Trump was asked about reopening talks with Iran earlier today.
Maybe at some point, but right now, I think the situation is so good. Maybe at some point. Look, it's very simple. They have to get rid of completely. They have to get rid of no nuclear weapons. Iran cannot have a nuclear. You know why? Because they use it.
All right, let's bring in retired 2-star Marine Corps General Arnold Kundaro. General, it's great to see you. So the president seems quite comfortable to let Iran twist in the wind. In addition to that statement, he put this out on Truth Social yesterday. He said there are no talks or conversations going on or scheduled with the Islamic Republic of Iran. The naval blockade remains in full force in effect. The Hormuz Strait is open and operating. All water mines have been removed or detonated. He feels like he's at the catbird seat here.
John, before getting to that very important topic, I want to compliment you, Sandra and Fox, for that very powerful segment you just did about the mother that was murdered in Great Falls. That's in our backyard. You and I know that area well. And those of us that are Fairfax residents, we have an obligation when we vote for law enforcement personnel and prosecutors. We vote people in that are going to crack down on these areas. In terms of your answer about Iran, I would have said before you made all those comments, we were in a protracted stalemate. But obviously, Iran is escalating. They clearly attacked the UAE. I don't care if they denied it, they did it. The UAE has stopped trade, as your segment said, billions of dollars a year. Iran is still attacking ships in the Straits of Hormuz, although they claim the straits are open, and we take that same position. The Wall Street Journal's most recent analysis is prior to the conflict, 130 ships a day. Now it's a trickle, maybe 3 to 4 on a good day, 6. And now Iran is threatening they're going to escalate against U.S. targets outside of the Middle East area of operations into southern Europe. If they attack a U.S. target in a NATO nation, they just triggered Article 5. 32 nations then will be at a war with Iran. And so I would say they're making a big mistake thinking that they have the upper hand. They don't have the upper hand. The president is correct to keep the economic and maritime pressure on, and time is on our side.
General Jack Keane, no, he's not Marines, but he agrees wholeheartedly with you about Iran maybe going to shoot itself in the foot by doing that. Listen to what he said here.
The Iranians are about to miscalculate, and they've done it before with this president. And they believe that being more aggressive, being more violent to create the image that this war is not working right and it's going to cause him political damage. He's not going to stand for that. I believe they'll go after everything that they value. What do they really value? What they value the most is all their oil and gas infrastructure. And I think that's very likely that we would take that down once and for all.
As I said, the president at the moment thinks that he's got time on his side. The price of oil is high, but not that high. Iran is sort of getting frantic here about trying to get the attention of the president. He's just really kind of not paying attention to them. But if they do go this extra mile, as you said, an attack on NATO, one nation is an attack on all, can trigger an Article 5 response. But at the very latest, Iran claims that it's trying to put together a coalition with some other countries against the United States. But it looks like the world's answer at this point.
No question about it. And I have immense respect for General Jack Keane, longstanding colleague of many of us. By the way, he's the first person maybe 10 years ago that publicly talked about
about the threat from China. I think his analysis is spot on. I would say that if Iran thinks, because of the mid-year politics, the president's going to